Hello, I'm guessing that you have clicked on this video for one of three reasons. First one being that you are currently interested in the idea of potentially studying in Hungary and you're just doing a bit of research to open that option later on down the line. Secondly, maybe you've already been accepted and you're getting ready right now to prepare yourself for the new academic year in September. So you're kind of clicking on this to see what you're in for. And lastly, maybe you just think, hey, it's a bit interesting, I'm quite bored, let's just see what he's got to say. And that's fine too. If that's you, stick around. And hey, who knows, maybe I'll give you something interesting that influences your decision to visit Hungary one day. I just completed my third year at the University of Pécs in Hungary, and I thought it would be a good time to make this video because the new academic year starts in September, where people will be coming into the country for the first time and maybe are not quite sure what to expect. I was definitely in that situation before I came, so I think I'm going to try to highlight some pros, some cons, and also share maybe a couple experiences as well, just to avoid that monotonous type of video where it's just a list format. And I think it's good to maybe start with the cons, get them out of the way, and then I'll finish off with the pros, because it's always better to finish off on a good note. Alright, so the first con that I would like to bring up is anything related to admin within Hungary. And that's not just to do with the university, but kind of in general as well. I've definitely noticed that there's quite a laid back approach, quite a slow approach to admin. And it can be very frustrating if you're trying to get your tax card, your student card, you're trying to get your resident permit or your address card at the immigration office. That can be a really tedious process. And obviously as well, there's certain issues within the university. If you're trying to get to the registrar's office and get a little bit of information or you need help with something, the lines tend to be very long and everything just seems very slow. But yeah, it's just something to keep in mind. If you ever want to do something admin related, make sure you have a good time slot allocated beforehand because there will probably be a long line outside the building. And then on top of that as well, try and mentally prepare yourself for some frustration if they still want some more documents that you don't have, or on the fifth time there's still something that they're not quite happy with. It's just one of those things, but eventually with persistence you get through everything. It's just something to think about. Okay, swiftly moving on to the second con, I will have to say the international student support could be better. And this is maybe because I went and studied in the US for 9 months before coming here. So there's a very big stark contrast that I've noticed between the two. And maybe that's just highlighted some of the insufficiencies here a little bit more than if I just came straight to Hungary. But for example, when I was in the US, we were greeted by maybe 30 or 40 mentors that were students in the upper years, forming an international student committee, and you could go to them with anything that you needed help with. They also had programs within the first week where we were doing our orientation and they were taking us to the bank and helping us to make our bank accounts, and they were very supportive with every little admin type of thing that we had to do and needed to get done. And that's not something I experienced here at all. I feel here you very much get thrown in the deep end, which I guess isn't the worst thing because you do need to kind of get into the swing of things quickly, and I think it's a bit of a shock to the system, and then after that, once you find your feet, you'll be okay. But I do think that there could be a little bit of work there. Interestingly, we did receive some emails towards the end of last semester that they might be starting a mentor program, so I'm not entirely sure. That could be changing slowly. I think that they are a bit aware that the international students sometimes find it difficult to adjust to the culture and just the new environment in general. So hopefully that does get better in years to come. But if you are coming in this new year, just keep that in mind as well. Okay, number 3. Now I want to try and speed this up a little bit so this video isn't too long. But for me, something that I've found a bit of an issue is the variety of food. Granted, I am in Pécs, which is a very small city. I don't think that this is really going to be an issue if you're in Budapest. If you do want to eat healthy, you definitely need to cook. And of course, that's something I'm trying to get better at in general because you'll save more money. But it's not always easy as a student, especially as a medical student, because you're going to be really busy and there are times where you get into bad habits and you do order quite a lot. And yeah, when I'm relying on that, I'm eating a lot of the same meals over and over. And I think that that's something that's quite challenging. It can be quite depressing because a lot of people rely on food for happiness. I definitely love my food. And coming from South Africa where we have a large variety of foods is something I've definitely struggled with. And lastly, con number 4. I think I'm only going to do 4 cons in this video. I don't want to overdo it too much. If you guys have more questions, you can definitely put them in the comments below and I will try and get back to you as soon as possible. but I'm going to highlight this one, which I think is something I've heard more from my friends rather than kind of personal experience. But a lot of people do have issues with the grading slash testing system within Hungary. I think even specifically at Pech, every university will vary slightly. I have mentioned this in previous videos, but if you're coming from a country where you're used to written exams, here it's a very different system where a lot of the exams are in an oral format, where you draw topics out of all the topics in total, and that's all they use to determine how much you know. And on top of that as well, they can be quite harsh with logistics, like maybe you don't qualify for a final exam if you don't achieve a certain amount of points within the semester, or you maybe get an extra topic in the exam for a little bit of an issue with the midterm. There just seems to be quite a few technicalities and quite a bit of variability. That for me is an issue, because obviously with the oral exams, everyone has a very different experience. It depends on the examiner you get, it depends on the topics. So there's so many different things that can change an exam experience. And that almost seems a bit unfair, because someone could maybe pass that studied a little bit less than you, but got better topics. The way I look at it is it's always going to kind of equal out by the end. You're going to get lucky in some exams, you're going to get unlucky in others. And by the end, everyone's going to kind of roughly have a similar path to what you did. Alright, now before I go into the pros, like I said, let me give you a little bit of a story so I can interrupt this monotonous feeling. I don't want the whole video to be a list. So let me give you a little bit of a transport story, because I do want to give you guys a bit of information about transport within the country. So it seems fitting to give you a bit of a transport story. So I was trying to catch the train from Budapest to Pech. And this was the first time that I'd ever caught a train by myself. So I was definitely a bit confused. And I was trying to figure out where the train was. I was looking at the screen, I had to ask a few people, and eventually I could locate the track and the location of the train, which you would think was the most difficult part done, and I was okay from then on. But that was completely the opposite of the truth. So I got to my train, I was on the right track, and first of all then trying to find the cart as well, because on your ticket obviously it says your cart and then your seat number as well. So I'm walking up and down the train, kind of pacing to locate the cart. Eventually I'm happy with the cart I need to get onto, but the issue is getting on. I had no idea how to get onto the train. I honestly, when I look back now, I'm like, this guy is such a dumbass. So I was standing outside the train, looking at my ticket, and there was a barcode at the top right. And my dumbass thought it would be a good idea to try and scan that barcode on the outside of the train, hoping that the train doors would open. This is literally what was going through my head. I was so lost, because the opening of the door, kind of next to it, there was a little like green lit up button. I didn't think it was a button at the time, because again, I was dumb. So I saw a green light and I thought, oh, okay, maybe that's kind of like a scanner. So you scan the barcode and then the doors open, and then it's proof that you've paid and you can get on the train and you're good to go. So I'm there trying to scan my barcode on this light and looking like the dumbest person in the world, and the train doors are not opening. I'm going back and forward, I'm trying different doors. Eventually, someone just walks behind me, goes straight up to the door, clicks the button, and the doors open. And he just looks at me, I look at him, I look down, and I just go, oh my word. It was so embarrassing. But eventually I got on the train. I figured out in hindsight that you get on the train and then the person comes, the conductor, after like 1 or 2 stops, and comes and scans your ticket. While I'm talking about transport, I might as well bring in some of the different routes and stuff that you can take to get to Pech. When you land in Budapest, the airport's quite far outside of the city center, and they do have a variety of different options to get into the city center. First one being the airport shuttle, which I tend to use now because it's the cheaper option. But if it's your first time coming into the country, then it might be a little bit confusing. I still think that it's worth looking into. Usually when you come out, it's on your right, when you come through the doors. And if you look on your right, like it's kind of like a purple symbol, and there's usually some people there that you can ask. And that bus will take you right into the city center. And then the other option is taking a cab, of course, so you can order a Bolt, which is something I recommend that you do. Don't get into just a normal taxi, because if you can't speak Hungarian, they might rip you off and give you a fee that is way higher than what it should be. At least on Bolt, when select the taxi and the destination and whatever else, then that is the fixed amount, or it gives you the small range, but you're not going to be ripped off massively. So that's the other option. And then of course the third option is a travel for you service. It's called Travel for You, and it's basically an airport shuttle where it can take you directly from the airport to your destination, even if that's in Pech, for example. So you can order beforehand on the website, and you can put in your end destination, and it will pick you up along with maybe 4 or 5 other students, and that shuttle will take you straight to your apartment in Pech or your dormitory in Pech, which is something that is very helpful. But of course, the other 2 options, the shuttle and the cab, is if you're going down the train route, because that will take you into the city center, and then you need to get to either Kaleti or Kielenfold station. And when you get to those 2, you can then catch a train to Pech. So of course, if it's your first time, I would actually recommend using the Travel for You as the first option, because it's the most simple. Second one being the Bolt to the train station directly, Kaleti station, and then taking the train to Pech. And then the last one being the airport shuttle bus, because that actually takes you to a street within the city center, and then you have to use the metro to get to the train station. And then after the train station, you can take the train to Pech. So it's a lot more complicated and not something I'd recommend if it is your first time in Hungary. Okay, so before I end the video, I said I wanted to leave you guys on a good note. So I am going to give you 4 pros quickly that I think can maybe give you a bit of excitement if you are coming to Hungary or just thinking of coming to Hungary. And the first one I want to mention is the cost of living. In general, in Europe, it is quite expensive, and that's something that is an obstacle, even though Europe comes with a lot of benefits. And I think in Hungary, you're lucky in the sense where you can slightly avoid that. Because, for example, I just went and did my week's worth of grocery shopping, an entire week's worth of food, and also some other sauces and stuff which tends to be expensive, and olive oils and stuff like that, because I've had my exam period where I was ordering a lot. And then I also went on a week trip to Amsterdam, which was awesome. And I've just got back, and I needed to kind of restock, and it cost me 75 euros for the entire week's worth of food. So that just gives you an idea. If you were to cook all the time and very rarely go out to eat, you could basically budget for under 400 euros a month on food easily. The second pro that I want to mention is actually very important if you are an international student coming to a new country and not really sure what to expect, and that is the safety aspect of things. And I think that Hungary is very safe. I can't completely comment on Budapest because I haven't really lived there. I've only kind of visited for a few weekends here and there. But in Pech specifically, where I live, very small city, I've never felt unsafe. I always walk around at night. A lot of people walk around as well. And I'm not someone who follows the news a lot, but I haven't actually heard of any kind of crazy things that have happened in the last few years. And that's just another important factor to consider. The third pro actually ties into what I just said about coming back from a trip from Amsterdam. And that is basically the proximity or the location. If you're someone who's coming to Hungary from outside of Europe, like for example me, who came from Africa or America or Asia, then you get that really cool benefit of being in Europe where everything is so close and yet every country is so different. So you can really make use of your time in Hungary, and when you get some free time, some weekends, some holidays here and there, you can try and travel and experience different cultures and new places. And the really cool thing as well is you don't even need a European passport, because as a student, you'll get your resident card when you live here. And that resident card allows you to travel in and around Europe, even without the EU passport or needing any additional visas or whatever else. So once you get that student visa and then you have your resident card, that is something that really opens the door for you to travel. And the last pro before I leave you, I'm not really sure how long this video is. I feel like it's maybe dragging a little bit, so I'm nearly there. I just want to finish it off. And that is basically some attractions or something to look forward to, or kind of what Hungary is known for. And first one that comes to mind is the nightlife within Budapest. It is something that is very well renowned around the world, and it is something that you definitely need to experience at some point. There are also tons of thermal baths within Hungary where there are natural hot springs, and that tends to be a very, very big tourist attraction, both in Budapest and even here near me in Pech, and I'm sure in other areas around the country as well. There's usually some parties going on as well. Again, very festive, very cool to experience. And the last one I'll just bring up is Lake Balaton, which is about 2 hours from Pech by train. Not entirely sure from Budapest. It is quite far out in the countryside, but it is a massive lake where people tend to have some music festivals and Also, there's some chalets that you can rent out where there's maybe like 10 bedrooms, and some people do go there and kind of have a nice party out on the lake for a weekend or something like that, do some water sports. So that's a cool attraction to maybe look into doing when you come and study in Hungary. Finally, I come to my last point, or kind of what I want you to take away from the video, and that is that, like any other country, Hungary does have its pros and its cons. And I genuinely believe that any place can be enhanced or depreciated depending on your mindset and then also the social circle that you have around you. And this is actually a conversation I had with one of my friends in this exam period that has just gone by. And it's something that we've decided we need to kind of work on a tiny bit in the new semester, just to kind of get out a little bit more and make the most of the city, because any city can be depressing if you just focused on your schoolwork and you go between the medical faculty and your home and you're not really getting that work-life balance right. So I want to make it a goal to hike more next semester, to go play some tennis, to go swim at some of the swimming pools that we have here, just to get out a little bit more and have a few more house parties. And even if I'm a little bit stressed about work, force myself to go out and club a few nights and go to a few bars. It's just really important to get that balance right. And yes, some things are limited, especially in Pech. There isn't much to do. There aren't many clubs, there's basically one or two. There aren't many bars, and there aren't a lot of kind of activities to do during the day. But again, if you have those people around you, maybe 3 or 4 very close friends where you just have a good time together, and then you force yourself to do something, it can end up being a really, really great experience. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Cheers.